Hi there berries, welcome to my support tier list for patch 12.5. Today we're going to be talking about the minor changes that are happening in the patch, what's happened in the patch previous, and what are the best champions to play in solo queue if you are a support main. If you don't know who I am, my name is Bizzleberry. I make support guides on this channel, and I also stream on twitch.tv/Bizzleberry. If you have any questions, feel free to leave anything down in the comment section down below, or feel free to ask on stream, or join our discord.gg/Bizzleberry, where we have a couple of thousand of support mains that will be more than happy to help if you have any questions. Now let's talk about the patch. We have Seraphine is the main one to look at for this one. There's a lot of numbers there. We've got things happening to her W, which is her shield/heal, depending if allies are already shielded or not. And we have an E reduction in cooldown. So the simplest one to talk about is the E reduction in cooldown at base values. So early stages of her E are just going to be lower. The later stages are still going to be the same. The W overall has been changed. Honestly, it's more of a... This is the more controversial one, which a lot of Seraphine players I think are having trouble with. And it is a nerf to Seraphine on herself. And it is a buff to your allies slightly. But it mainly nerfs, honestly, AP Seraphine. But does slightly help out Enchanter Seraphine. The reason why it's good for Enchanter Seraphine now is because of the missing health healing percentage that we can see on the bottom line on the W. So heal was 5% of the missing health per ally. Now that's going to go up to 7% if you max your W. So the kind of build that you're looking at now for Seraphine is still probably at least a few points in Q. Maybe you want to max Q so you can get the passive stacks going to do your double proc of your spells, and then you probably would want to max your W second just so that you can shield and heal just a little bit more often, and now the heal value is going to be a little bit higher, especially if you're playing Enchanter Seraphine. The heal will be slightly higher because if you have stuff like Moonstone and things like that, the heal will be a little bit stronger. Plus they've also nerfed some slight AP scaling on Seraphine, so you're not as inclined into wanting to take basically flat or AP on items. Because of that, you're going to be wanting to steer away from that. So hopefully that kind of clears up, you know, the situation on her. So it's probably Q max, then W max into E. Now, one of the other changes I don't have on screen for you is that Renata did get nerfed midway through patch 12.4. A couple of nerfs include reduction in duration on her W, which is that revive, going down from 3 seconds to 2.5 seconds. We've also had a change in the nerfing on her base armor as well, just a little bit. Overall though, Renata's been doing really well in solo queue. That's why they nerfed her, because her win rates were going quite up. Going into the previous patch, I predicted that she would do particularly well in the lower ELOs, I felt like, because kind of like the Swain support kind of effect. But then as people figured out how to counter her in later ELOs, maybe her win rate will fall off. But actually, no, she's actually been very consistent across all ELOs, and we'll talk about her in a second. Going over to the tier list now, we have... Well, let's get straight to the point. We got tier 1 and tier 2 here. So the tier 2 is Senna, Lux, Leona, Janna, Lulu, Zillion, and Renata. And then the tier 1 you can see up there as well. The reason why I'm getting straight to the point here is because there's just not a lot to talk about this patch. If your champions aren't here, I'm going to do a quick scroll for you. I'm not really going to waste my time because I go through a lot of these things on the previous tier list, and if you're watching this, you've probably seen and heard of me say all this stuff before. But the reason why these champions are the best, I want you to focus on these champions if you're climbing in solo queue. It doesn't matter if you're unranked and you're starting solo queue for the first time, or if you are like bronze iron, bronze, silver, gold, plat. Even once you're entering into diamond, a lot of these champions are still extremely good as well. So we'll talk about the tier 2. As you can see, well, we'll talk about tier 1 and tier 2 kind of together. Tanks obviously have been struggling for the last year now. Blitzcrank is still the standout one and usually gets permabanned a lot in the lower ELOs. But if you can get a hold of him and you like playing Blitzcrank, then do so. You're gonna have a better odds of winning your games picking him. He's probably one of the most standout ones here in this entire tier list. And then you have Leona as the second best tank, and the tank that if you are a tank player are probably most likely to get hold of. She's incredibly strong right now, and I highly recommend her. Correctly, a notable pick, Nautilus is a credible pick still to mention if you want to play another hook champion and Blitzcrank is banned. Now going into the more slightly unusual champions, so Senna is doing really well at the moment in the support role. I can highly recommend if you have experience playing AD carry. It shouldn't be too hard to kind of transition into that, but as a support you are extremely fragile, so make sure you be careful of that. If you are one champion that isn't in this and is in tier 3, but if you are very low in the rankings at the moment between unranked and bronze and you just want to kill stuff, then Brand is actually a really good option if you just want to get kills, but like don't get too used to that. He falls off extremely quickly. I would next then recommend Lux or Zyra. Both of those champions have been doing really well instead of Q in the last well, Zyra's done really well for the last couple of years. Lux is starting to come back into the scene properly in the last few months. So you want to kill stuff and just get all the kills and make your AD carry sad that you're the carry and he's the support. Then Lux and Zyra are the main options there. Now we have a lot of enchanters up here because enchanters are generally just doing pretty well. You've got a lot of options, a lot of valid options. You've got Soraka, you've got Sona, Nami, Janna for disengage if you're up against a couple of tanks like the Leona pick, for example. Lulu is really good if you can trust your AD carry if they're playing a hyper carry like a Vayne or a Kog'Maw. Zillion's a kind of a quirky pick that's actually doing quite well if you're playing, if you're able to land those stuns and stay far back enough to make sure you also can act as a revive for an ally rather than using it on yourself. That's huge. And as I mentioned, Renata's win rates have been doing very consistently well across the board. She's a little bit harder to mechanically play at the moment, but I'm sure if you watch my guides you can figure it out. I've got a Renata guide if you haven't seen that one already. Interestingly, on the Renata guide, there are about 3 different builds going around right now. 2 are extremely similar, which is my build plus a Summon Airy build. You can do whichever one you want there. Honestly, they're both extremely similar. There's a tank Renata build, but honestly, it doesn't seem like people have claimed that it's doing pretty well, and honestly pros also have been mixed response to that. Seems to be a lot of pros doing both Airy and Arcane Comet, a couple doing Guardians, but honestly the pros that I've seen at the moment haven't been doing too particularly well with the Guardian build. So I would still recommend either an Airy or a Comet build. Basically just use my runes and just swap out the Comet for Airy if you really want to, since Summon Airy does proc off the auto attacks. But yeah, she's a solid tier 2 in between tier 1 and tier 2 right now. She's a very strong pick. But if you are more of a passive player, like some kind of like just throwing things out here, if you are still undecided on what champions to play, if you're more of a passive player, then I can highly recommend a Sona W max build. So you just max your heal and shield first. Play kind of passively. You don't have to necessarily do too much work. Harassing, early in the lane phase, if you're going a W max build, isn't going to give you much, but you still want to get a couple of chips in here and there for Mana Flow Band and Spell Thief's Edge. But that W max build on Sona has been doing extremely well for people at the moment. If you want another kind of passive champion to play and a bit more reactionary, Janna is really good, as we mentioned, against tanks. And for everything else there, you can be really aggressive with the Soraka, the Nami, the even with Lulu, you can kind of be a little bit aggressive enchanter wise during the laning phase and pack a big punch early on, but don't get too used to harassing throughout the laning phase, because when you transition into that mid game, you're going to want to take a step back and make sure you're focusing more on the shielding and healing front rather than looking to do damage. I hope this kind of, you know, gives some people some direction on where to go on what they want to do in their solo queue climb. It's a little bit shorter video than usual, just because there's not much happening with this patch. But I hope everyone is staying safe. I hope everyone is, you know, on the grand scheme of things, are doing well. And yeah, that's all I really want to add at the moment. We'll be playing solo queue and Lost Ark on stream for the next couple of weeks, and hopefully 12.6 is a little bit more eventful, because, you know, no one really wants patches like this where not a whole lot's happening. And yeah, it's kind of, you don't want stale patches, and we've kind of not really had much for a while, so fingers crossed next patch is a little bit more eventful. All the best, guys, take care, and see you tomorrow for a gameplay video. Bye.